Welcome to Efficient Algorithms. Today we'll talk mostly about organizational things, and I'll address the prerequisite version of the module and the for-credit version of the module. And the second will mostly be in German, so at some point I'll make a hard cut and switch back to German. For the moment, in the interest of our master student from abroad, let's stay with English for a little bit. The goal for today is to make you all aware how this module is organized and a bit of what we'll cover. And I mean, if it is an elective module for you, if you have the choice, then you should be able to decide whether you like it enough or to keep it, or whether you want to do something else. And we'll briefly talk about the assessments, how you get marked. So welcome, that's me, Sebastian Wild, Sebastian Wild, whatever you prefer. I'll probably react to both. My office is in hallway 5D. The safest is to always fire an email first and see if I'm in, if you want to avoid disappointment. Otherwise, email is the preferred way if you need anything. We'll soon have another person joining my group, but he's not here yet. I did bring one of the tutors. Finn Moltmann is here, and maybe some of you know each other as well anyways. And Arseny Winkel is the second tutor. So you made up which group is which. Does that matter? Do people need to know who is leading their session to vote? Maybe not. I don't know. Okay, Finn is doing Wednesdays, and Arseny will do the Thursday session. We'll have to kind of load balance it a bit. Okay, I tried to put all the important information in one slide, some of which I've mentioned before. There's the module website. Here's the link that you've seen before. This is where I try to keep most of the information. Anything that can be public will be on that website, just because I find it more convenient not to have to log in for every little bit. But also I think it's, for you as well, more convenient. We'll use Campuswire, what I mentioned briefly. There's this pin again to join in the link. We'll use Slido, which maybe you've logged into. We'll come to that in a second. And just to get that information out, unless shouldn't be a surprise for anyone. There will be a written exam at the end of the module, and that's going to be your final mark. This is pretty much prescribed by our regulations that the module mark is equal to the mark of the final exam. To be allowed to take the exam, you have to participate in the exercise classes, and there will be weekly exercise sheets that you submit in groups. More on that soon. And you'll have to reach a certain number of points from those. If you don't reach those, then you're not admitted to the exam, so you cannot take it. It's pretty standard in our overall program, but important to mention. All right. Note on languages, the module itself has to be in German because it is a required module on our bachelor's course on data science. And that one is in German, so irrespective of what I would maybe think is useful or prefer or doesn't matter, it'll be in German. And the same is true for the examinations, although we'll accept English answers. If you write them in English, that's fine for us. It's a different story for the prerequisite module. I'll comment on that in a second. What we can also provide for, if there's students that want to take the module and don't take it as a prerequisite module, that want to take it for credit, for example, international students on the Masters in Computer Science, our group that might choose this one, we can provide the exam questions as an informal translation in English, that's fine. And you can submit your answers in English. The official version has to be in German. Okay. I also decided to keep the slides in English because I think it's useful. The terminology is mostly in English anyways. You'll see me struggle translating things once in a while. This whirlwind here is places I've spent my professional life. And so there's also some personal confusion with some terms that will shine through at some point. You'll see. Besides that, translating is way easier than it used to be. And so hopefully that's not a big hurdle for most people. Also because the lectures are recorded and you can watch the recordings again with YouTube's automatic subtitles. I'm not generating those manually, but they're pretty decent. And so maybe at least slowing things down or so can help some students if language is an issue. Okay, I think enough of that. Now let me briefly speak specifically to students that have this conditional admission prerequisite module. So for context for everyone, we have an international program, Master's Data Science. That is a consecutive master's program, so you have to have a specific undergraduate module to be admitted to it. And at least for some iterations, students were admitted subject to doing this conditional admission requirement after they started. And that means there was a gap in their undergraduate program with respect to what our master's assumes. And to fill that gap, to plug that gap, this module, or the conditional admission version of that module, formally they're kind of separate, was given to students to kind of fill that gap, and you have to pass that exam kind of retrospectively to be admitted to your program. So the normal version is separate from that. The conditional admission version is technically separate from the lectures as well. There's a decent overlap in terms of the material that we cover, but it's not identical. And to be specific, the material that counts for the prerequisite students is linked here on this separate page. And it's exactly what is listed there that is relevant for the exam for the prerequisite students. There's a YouTube playlist of videos from old recordings from my previous employment in Liverpool where they were in English. And so these cover most of the material from the lectures. And then there's a few selected book chapters from this a standard algorithm book that covers the rest that wasn't covered in any of the videos that I had. Now, what you don't need to do is whatever I said about these exercise sheets and admission to the exam, that does not apply to the prerequisite module. There you can just show up for the exam, and anything you do in preparation before that is under your control. What we'll try to do this year is offer a bit more of support for exercise problems, at least have the sheets prepared in English. We'll try that and see how the demand for that is. And we'll also have some old exams from last year now. It's the second time I'm doing the module. Last year, a lot of things were without prior versions, a bit harder to prepare for the exam. But this year, we'll release on Elias the old lecture questions, the old exam questions. And then prerequisite students also see a bit what the exam is ahead of time. Okay, but again, important bit is the material is exactly what's listed on this subpage of the module page. It's what's in the videos and what's in those lecture and in these book chapters and nothing else. Okay? This came up last year. I don't know if this is still relevant. You cannot do both modules. If you're in the situation that you're given this as a conditional admission prerequisite, then it means you're deemed to have taken this in undergrad, and then you can't get credit for the same module again. This is similar as if some of you were doing your bachelor's in Marburg and stay for the master's. You can't get the same module as credits in both programs. Yeah, this point is important to stress. Unfortunately, because it's a conditional admission module, we don't get any extra support. For the university, this is kind of not official teaching. We're not getting extra credit for doing extra work. And we don't get, in particular, we don't get extra funding for more tutors. So we can't really support a second exercise class with marked submissions for the exam, for the exercise problems or other exam prep. So what we'll try is to see how the load balance works out, and if our tutors have some capacity left, then they'll offer to look over submissions from prerequisite students as well. But this is something I can't do a firm promise on. But approach us, and we'll come back to how, what other methods you have to involve yourself with the module. You have to be a bit proactive on this one. And in particular, there's a question and answer forum that you're welcome to use. I mean, the modules are formally separate, the two versions of this class, but you're very welcome, and I'm happy if you mingle with the students and kind of work together towards learning the stuff what this is about. Let me make some a little detour, and for the few international students that are in the audience, but maybe some more are watching as well in the recording. I think we're all very happy that you're here, and the fact that we can't support you through this module is not something I like. We would love to offer better support to get you up to speed for the exams on this. It's tough with the resources that we have, but we'll try, and you're welcome. I hope you settle in our home country. If anything, this country needs good people to come to us. It needs immigration. There's a lot of political push against that, but I want to take a firm stance on the opposite side. We need immigration. We need good people to come here, and you're welcome. But we're bound to what the resources allow us to do for the module, and so we'll have to work our way through this. Let's talk a bit about Slido. The reason I'm using the system is for a simple psychological trick. You sit there for 90 minutes in a standard lecture in TV mode, and what that does to your brain is that you become a bit passive. And Slido is a very simple hack, a psychological hack to get you back awake. And that's pretty much mostly what I'll use it for. There's more pedagogy behind it, but I think this is the biggest influence, really. It's a quick way to check where people are and so on. It's an easy way for you to ask questions. You can ask questions anonymously if you prefer. All of this is great. There's usually a few students that are happy to ask questions just or verbally, but then many more that have smart thoughts, and you're welcome to use Slido to utter them to the rest of the class. So there's two main features that we'll use. One is the polls, where I'll ask you questions, usually multiple choice, and on your devices you can click an answer. And the other is that's the push version. I'm pushing a question to you, and the other is pull. You can send questions. I mean, you can try it if you want. That's the other option. You can just use that anytime. I might try to see what happens, but might decide to wait for a good moment in the material to take a pause and answer questions. And so once in a while on the slides, this will pop up, which is the point where I'll start the interaction on Slido, and you can vote on the thing. And the way it looks in Slido is this. So you see, in this case, you immediately see what the others vote. I'll also keep an eye on this number up in the bottom. That tells me how many people are paying attention. Physically in the room is not the same. Now, minus the few that might have not brought some device that can vote. Okay, pretty half-half. That's okay. Maybe now a few more people have used these things before. This is a very neutral question. It doesn't ask about whether you liked it or not, or whether it was useful. You're more than 32, aren't you? Maybe. Okay, something like this. Let's call it 33. So it seems to work and is pretty intuitive. Now, that also ties into my approach to lectures. I've already commented on, or I told you what I'm planning to do in terms of recordings, etc. I've experimented over the years with different formats. There's all these cool flip teaching, and that was the new thing for many, many years. And I tried it a bunch, and it never really worked for me. Maybe others are better with this. So for me, the main thing is a synchronous live lecture. Because for the simple reason that it keeps you focused on some specific topic at least once or twice a week, if nothing else. If you just have recordings or you just have book chapters or whatever else interactive formats, it is incredibly hard to stay on topic and stay with the teaching for a longer period of time. I've tried that as kind of on the other side of watching MOOCs, massive open online courses, even not sure if that's still a thing, that term. That was already before the pandemic a hot topic. And now the pandemic, everyone was teaching online, fine. But I noticed the only thing that really works for me in my teaching is doing things synchronously so that people have a minimum engagement time regularly. I think this is overall still the best, but you get the recordings in case it doesn't work at all for you. You decide, I want to treat you as the adults that you are. And if you think you have a better model that works for you, that's fine by me. I've talked about asking questions anonymously. That's what Slido is for. I think this is really useful and important. I want to hear from as many of you as possible. And that's the easiest option for doing that is via some online tool. I'll come to the question in a sec. Okay, and then keeping you awake a little bit. So what does that mean for the module? Apart from what I've already mentioned, we'll have the lectures. That's where you're currently sitting in with the questions. And we'll have the tutorials. Then we'll use Campuswire as everything that happens outside of class for any asynchronous communication there. I mean, you're always welcome to come and see me if you have questions, but I'll often redirect you to Campuswire for things if they also concern other students. I'll tell you more what this looks like, but it's a bit like Reddit, so you can ask questions and answer them. And the thing is that if you ask there, everyone gets to see the answer and everyone profits. A little more experimental thing is an exam question gallery. So I'll try to crowdsource making good exam questions to all of you. And the deal is that if you do a good job there, then maybe one of these questions pops up on the actual exam and you know it up front, which is a useful thing. And then, of course, the final exam, via the regulations, is the only thing that gives us the final mark. Okay, just for proof of concept, let's go to Slido. Someone sent this, I delivered this question. It seems to work, so I would take this off. And let me go back. In case of a real question, might spend some more time. Okay? Let's also talk a little bit about the content of the module at this point. We'll basically look at the basic algorithms and data structures that many other things build on. And while we focus on the practical methods, meaning the methods that have efficient running times or have small running times, the focus is much on the methods and techniques so that you're able to also generalize them, use them for other problems that might pop up wherever you end up working. That is often something that people report back, even if they're in some industry job that doesn't seem to work much with algorithms. The algorithms lectures was often something that they looked back at and found it useful. if nothing else, then to get through the tech interviews. All right. What this looks like in terms of individual sections. So this is my way of breaking up the material in roughly week-sized chunks. So each is roughly 2 lectures. It's going to be true on average, not exactly. We're currently here, and then we'll look at these things. More on that when we get to it. Let's not skip the assessment. You'll have to have some final mark. Den Teil kann ich ja auf Deutsch machen, denn das betrifft ja tatsächlich nur die Studierenden, die das für Credit hören. So everyone on the prerequisite module, this is the German version of the exam. It won't concern you, except for the dates. These are preliminary. Likely needs to be stressed a lot more. This might still move, but in case you want to keep the dates free, these are likely the dates of the final exam. Ja, Material für die Prüfung ist alles, was wir in den Vorlesungen machen, alles, was wir in den Übungen machen. Das war bei den Prerequisite-Teilen nicht dabei. Es gibt ein paar Stellen in den Vorlesungen, wo ich explizit sage, das ist nicht Teil vom Prüfungsstoff. Steht dann in der Regel auch auf den Folien oder ich male es dazu. Das sind einfach dann tief weiterführende Dinge, die ich hilfreich finde zu erwähnen oder die ich Ihnen gerne mitgeben möchte, die wir aber nicht abprüfen wollen. Ansonsten alles andere ist einbezogen. Und für die Prüfungszulassung stehen hier nochmal die konkreten Regeln. Wir haben 12 Blätter geplant, 12 Übungsblätter, die Sie in Gruppen abgeben. Dazu kommen wir gleich noch. Und Sie dürfen 2 davon auslassen, nicht abgeben oder komplett nullen, wie auch immer. Und über die anderen summiert müssen Sie 50% der Punkte erreichen. Auch relativ Standard in Marburg, aber nochmal, um es explizit zu sagen. Die Übungen selbst, die Übungszettel finden Sie auf der öffentlichen Website, tauchen dann in der Tabelle auf, in der die Wochen aufgelistet sind. Abgeben tun Sie die in Ilias, und zwar als Dreiergruppen im Idealfall. Wir haben vielleicht ein bisschen Flexibilität, dass wir da ein bisschen rumschubsen, aber Sie können ja erstmal versuchen, Dreiergruppen zu bilden. Ich weiß nicht, wie streng ihr dann am Ende sein wollt, was die Gruppengröße angeht. Also viel größere Gruppen finde ich eher schwierig, weil dann der Einzelne nicht so viel von dem Übungseffekt bekommt. Sehr viel kleinere Gruppen treibt halt die Anzahl Abgaben hoch. Also würde ich sagen, 3 peilen wir mal an und Zweiergruppen, wenn es nicht anders passt. Da haben Sie in etwa eine Woche dafür Zeit, um die zu bearbeiten. Und das ist so eine Mischung aus einfachen Sachen, um nochmal was einzuüben, was wir in der Vorlesung kurz angeteasert haben, und teils auch alten Klausuraufgaben, die ja, einfach interessant sind, damit Sie ein bisschen wissen, wie das am Ende so aussehen wird. Zusätzlich haben wir in den Übungen selbst Präsenzaufgaben, die dann auch auf der Website stehen, kurz vorher. Das sind so kleine Aufgaben, die Sie dann in der Übungsstunde selbst direkt lösen sollen, um so ein bisschen auf das nächste Übungsblatt vorzubereiten. Das ist in der Regel der Gedanke. Und oder Teile aus der Vorlesung nochmal ein bisschen klarer zu beleuchten. Okay, die sind aber nicht abzugeben, das ist sozusagen nur on the spot, können Sie die machen. Okay, zum Rest kommen wir gleich nochmal. Ihnen ist vielleicht schon aufgefallen, es gibt eine Menge cooler Tools da draußen. This is relevant for everyone, so let's switch back to English actually. It's a cool and exciting time. I'm using chat assistants for various things. They're pretty cool, they're good for some things, they're stupid for other things. There's one thing where they're really harmful, particularly because they work reasonably well, and that's for solving exercise problems. Especially if they're fairly narrow and maybe programming focused. The usual LLM-based tools work really well, and maybe just because they've seen a similar solution on the web, it doesn't really matter whether it's impressive AI achievements or not. What it does is that it kills the effect for you. If you take our exercise problems, which is the admission to the exam, it's not what you're marked on. I mean, needless to say, during the exam, you'll be on your own, and you won't have any assistance from any tools. So it's just your brain and a pen and a piece of paper. That's what we want to assess, because I'm deeply convinced that we need skilled people for various reasons. And not the least is that AIs make horrendous mistakes sometimes. And we want some, I don't know, most sane humans would not do certain things. And so I want to rely on our society being built on mostly sane human beings, also in the future. But that means you need to acquire certain skills. If you zoom out a bit, I hope that's why you're here in university anyways. You get some fancy piece of paper at the end that might open some doors. But really what you should want to take out of all of this is that you're societally approved, taking a few years out of your usual life of working to work on fun things and learn new things, learn some fun things. So don't take that fun away by solving the exercises with too much AI help. It can be useful to learn how to use AI tools, but don't use it for the exercise problems. It's working against you in the end. You're still encouraged to use them. For example, for a replacement for learning about basic facts about some topic. That's totally fine. It's also fine to use them as a spell checker on steroids. What's not okay is to use them to generate large parts of your assessment or your assignments, and in particular, not mention that you've used them. So if you use them for something, at least give them credit and list what you've done. But don't make them co-authors, okay? That's what the major conferences in computer science settled on as the rules for AI in research. I know this is all pretty reasonable in the abstract, and I guess it's not too surprising that this is something I would like you not to do or like you to do. But here's another a thing that plays into this. If you had to guess, so this is predictor here means the question says, what do you think is the #1 predictor of whether a student cheats in assessments? And predictor means you're collecting data from many people, and then you're trying to find correlations. And it's correlation strictly, not causation. We can't, from the data I know, we can't tell. But if you were to ask people various things, and I know I'm using this question, some people have seen it before. I'm using this in all my lectures. What is the #1 thing about a person that correlates best with whether or not they cheat on assessments, self-reported cheating? I'll show you what the others send in a second, but I don't want to stop your thinking straight away. Anyone still busy thinking and typing? All done? Okay, let me show you what we got. Lots of different answers. Grandma? Is that grandma or is it grammar? Okay, whatever. Both are interesting guesses, I think. Not in lectures, lack of time, time pressure, same solution. Not going to lectures, hence exercise is too hard. Yeah. Assignment being too good. I'll take that. That's okay. When it's easier to do. Formality. Okay, again, grammatic. Okay, I'll ponder over this. The right one's on the slide. If you want to hear the full story, there's a YouTube video link that you can watch. The number one predictor is procrastination. So whether or not people have trouble managing their time and constantly end up doing things last minute, plus spending time on things. The procrastination part is spending time on things that they afterwards regret and would have rather preferred they had spent otherwise. And so this, I mean, it's probably not a causation in a strict sense, but what I take from this is that if you're getting desperate because you need to submit something right now, otherwise all these bad things happen, then you start cheating because you run out of better options. Now, if you're already in this desperate mode, there's very little I can really do. The thing that you should do is not get into that mode whenever you can. And the number one thing you can do for that is good time management. This is boring, and I don't want to get into a management seminar here. But maybe you should think a little bit about whether you can plan your time a bit more consciously. There's good tools for that. The further you go in your professional lives, the harder these things will get. So it's a good skill to have. And there's very, very easy, not at all sophisticated tools that you can use. So that's a fun thing to keep in mind. Of course, we've all been there. Within this year, there were 2 paper deadlines where I've written papers late at night. As this stuff happens, sometimes you can't avoid it. But you should try to not always have it happen. Okay. For the rest of this module, I want to give a bit of an overview of the different tools that I'm using. I'll try to go a little quicker because maybe these are all intuitive enough. Number one is Campuswire. That's this question and answer forum, the Reddit for lectures, if you want. You could join with that link and the pin. You can do it now if you want. There's 2 features that we'll use. One is called class feed, and that's the Q&A part. There's also chat rooms that you can use if you want. I'm not going to use them a lot. They're essentially like a typical chat room with the chaos that comes with that. The class feed is what I'll mostly use, and it's a combination of sending announcements from us to you, and you can just format them in Markdown and use LaTeX formulas and these things. It's a bit more nerd compatible compared to Elias or the other tools that we have. And you can also ask questions from your side. And again, you can do this anonymously or with your name. So specifically, the class feed is a collaborative Q&A. I want you all to also answer other people's questions. And you can ask a question in public or in private. The default should be to ask in public, unless you think it kind of spoils some assessment or is something that's really just relevant for yourself, then you can ask a private question there, that's fine. But this is essentially like sending me a private email, except that also the tutors can answer. So it's often faster. The public question should be pretty much anything else. In particular, anything that is a question about the material of the lecture or some question you would ask me after class or ask in the tutorials, often is better suited to ask on Campuswire, basically for 2 reasons. And that's the goals that we have for this. everyone gets the same answer. That's fairer. If you ask me in some private office hour and I give you one answer, and then the next person asks me the same thing a week later and I give a slightly different answer, this is not so great. I prefer you to have the same information. And then the other reason is you can also answer questions, which is where this really becomes interesting. Because if you think about a question and make an effort to formulate an answer, and you can do this whatever language, okay? It doesn't matter. You can also take little photos of some handwritten stuff. This is all relatively flexible. They have a mobile app which is not perfect, but it's usable. If you think about other people's questions and answer them, that's going to help you a lot more to learn things. It's an old saying among teachers that you only really understand something once you try to teach it to someone else. And it's so true. It's boring as a statement, but it's so true. So use it as that. The promise from our side will be, that's on how we will, so all the tutors will also be on there to answer questions, but also other students. So what we'll promise to do is if some student answers a question, we'll read through it, and if it's correct, we'll mark it with some endorsement. There's a feature of the system to say this answer has been checked by an instructor. So even if it's a student answer, you can rely on it. Or if something's missing, we'll just write a little addition to it. Okay? We'll also, to encourage this, wait a bit before answering any question in case someone wants to chip in. And I'll usually ruthlessly redirect you to Campuswire. If you send me a private email with some question that could have been a public question, I'll just send back Campuswire. Okay? So you can save us this email back and forth if you directly go there. For anything that's private or personal that only concerns you, happy to get your emails. Yeah, also upvote answers and questions. You'll find this is easy to use. There's still Elias around and Marvin. So Elias will use for anything that is official or where the data is sensitive. So any marks or your submissions of tutorial exercise sheets, those will be on Elias. And you'll get your results there from the marking of the submissions. And we'll also eventually put the exam marks there. For anything else, I'll try to use the more convenient systems. Where data is sensitive, we'll stick to Elias. Okay? Okay, almost the last bit. This ominous exam question gallery. Maybe it's a bit early in the term to really discuss this in detail. Again, the goal is, if you think about how to assess a certain topic, that's actually very good preparation for answering questions that I come up with or we come up with. So thinking about exam questions is another way to get you actively engaged with the material. And thinking about good exam questions is actually really hard. So I think it's a fun process to go through. And it also forces you to think about what could be on the exam, which at some point later in the term you'll do anyways. But my point here is, do this while we go along. While you're sitting here anyways, think about how would you assess this topic and write down the question already during the term. And again, this is open to all the students on either of the module versions. And it's some version of a LaTeX online system like Overleaf, but one that does allow an unbounded number of collaborators. So you'll learn a bit of LaTeX on the way, or you ignore it and someone else fixes the typesetting for you. So all I can really say is try this. I think it's useful for you. And the promise is, if you come up with good questions, we'll select some to put them on the actual exam. I might not tell you which ones up front, but you increase your chances. And knowing a pool of questions that will be selected from, I think is an advantage for the exam. Okay, the last bit It's just a little, in terms of the topic, setting the focus on the right thing. First of all, it's a university program, so the focus is on foundational scientific skills, understandings, connections. It's not just a vocational training course. It's not just about teaching you how to have the skills on your next job, or teaching you the current JavaScript framework that gets you that web developer job. It's about the foundations that last over several decades. And for this module specifically, it's part of theoretical computer science. The hope is that we'll get a bit more towards this part. Let me just read out this one. There's an XKCD comic, in case you don't know these. There'll potentially be more of those in the lecture slides. They're pretty nerdy, but good ones. So the world is so complicated. The more I learn, the less clear anything gets. There are too many ideas and arguments to pick and choose from. How can I trust myself to know the truth about anything? And if everything I know is so shaky, what on earth am I doing teaching? I guess you just do your best. No one can impart perfect universal truths to their students. Except math teachers. Thank you. So we'll focus on the universal truths of practical algorithms, which sometimes means making a slightly more abstract statement in an abstract model of computation and all these things, as opposed to just saying, this currently runs fine on my machine. I don't bother why. And then next year it doesn't, and I'm down here. Or, well, the other way around. What this means is that we'll need a bit of math background, and that's what we'll cover in the next unit.